This is Starry Eyes ASMR. I am Ari, and today I have this flower bouquet in front of me that I would like to show you and do a little bit of dusting. So this bouquet was actually my wedding bouquet, and for our wedding florals, my husband and I did wooden flowers, and I think that we used, it was like Sola wood flowers, and they are these flowers that are shaped, I think basically by like wood pulp, and so they are artificial and last obviously longer than real florals do. And I had a bunch of these white ones. We just got a bunch of like variety packs, and we dyed them our wedding colors, which was mostly the only ones we really dyed were these kind of mauve ones. And this is actually a slightly different color now than it was when we initially dyed them and got married, but I think these are a little more purple now. But I have them, or this bouquet, just in a glass vase. And I have this sitting in our bedroom on my vanity desk. And I don't like to handle these too much just because of the oils in my fingers, but I want to take one of my little makeup brushes and do kind of a little show and tell, maybe while I'm also brushing off some of these flowers. I don't really dust them very often, so I think it is due time. On my bouquet, I have these artificial ferns, and I feel like quite up close everything is kind of, obviously artificial, but we definitely didn't have any large preference for real florals, and so this was one spot where we were able to save some money, and we made floral arrangements for our tables, all with the artificial flowers, and we had extra fern leaves and just extra of our greenery. And then we actually used pine wreaths that we got on sale at, I think, Michael's. And we got like a huge box of these pine wreaths after the holidays for like $10. And we used those as our table centerpieces. And then we did a round mirror in the middle and added flowers and ferns and baby's breath and everything all around it. So we have these fern sprigs. We also have this baby's breath sprinkled throughout. And those are pretty bright white and green here. And then you also see sticking up, I had some little sprigs of pine. And then I wanted my bouquet to be mostly these white flowers. And they are different shapes and styles, and you can see this one had a little bit of a tear. I mean, this was after, our entire wedding day and dancing, and I didn't do a bouquet toss because that wasn't really an important tradition to me. And I didn't want my bouquet to, I knew I wanted to keep it. And we had a very, low-key wedding. And I have these, I love, my favorite ones in here are these ones that I think look the most like roses. I think this one here is maybe my favorite flower in the whole bouquet. But they also had these little kind of tightly wound ones that almost look like rosebuds. And I think those were kind of the two main styles that I used in my bouquet. Except for some of the colored ones, I did have these ones that almost have like this pointed center, and I don't know what real flower this one would be mimicking. But it was very fun to do our own florals and to play around with doing the flower dye, and we got paint samples, like really small jars of paint samples, and we were able to kind of play around until we got the color that we want. And this flower here, you can see it's actually kind of drooping quite a bit. And I think that the ones with the dye they're just a little bit heavier than the ones without the dye. So they do, I think, maybe need a little bit more TLC. But that was kind of everything in my bouquet. So I just had the white and the maroon, or not maroon, the mauve flowers. I had the baby's breath, the pine, and the ferns. And then at the base of my bouquet, I'll show you. You can also see I did some filler with, it's just like a grass filler you can get for bouquets, and it makes your bouquet look more full. But I had mine, and actually some right here fell out. But I had mine in here to kind of hide all of the wire stems that I used. And then I wrapped my bouquet in just this twine. And then it was very special. My mother-in-law had a family heirloom necklace that she offered me for my wedding day. And I had quite a high neck wedding dress. And so I actually wasn't planning on wearing a necklace at all. But I was able to wrap the necklace around the base of my bouquet and have it like a bouquet charm. And it was really, really sweet. And I was kind of glad that I was still able to incorporate it in some way. And I also made my bridesmaids bouquets, and they were just smaller versions that only had white flowers, so they did not have any of the colored flowers. And I kind of liked that my bouquet as the bride had like the pop of color, and I felt like it made it kind of stand out a little bit more, and in our pictures it's really, really cute. But I'm very glad that I did the artificial flowers, because this is just something that I can look at, you know, every day. And I should probably take better care of it. And I know that you can also get like your real bouquet like dried or preserved, but there is always just risk with that. And it saved us money. I do remember when I was first trying to put the bouquet together and like, you know, combine everything, all of the elements, and I was just not having a good time. And I think it's also just all of the silly stress that comes with wedding planning. And my mom did a last minute trip to come see me because we were living about 3 hours away. And maybe more than that. It might have been like a 4-hour drive. One weekend she decided to come stay with us and help put together my bouquet. and she helped us kind of figure out what we wanted to do for our table centerpieces. Although I think my husband was primarily the one that really kind of had the idea and put it together, because we had these wreaths that we had just picked up as just kind of a like, we'll see if we want them, because we knew that we wanted a very like green kind of Pacific Northwest wedding. So we figured we'd be able to use them somewhere, and we actually had trimmed through the wire ring to just stretch them out into a line, and we used those at the head of our like head table. We just had a table for the two of us. What is that called? A sweetheart table. And we did use some of the pine wreaths like that, but our venue had round tables, and so we liked the idea of having the round wreaths as the centerpiece, and then really kind of decorating them so they didn't look just like Christmas leaves. Also, you can see here, I actually still have some little dried rose petals that I have not gotten out. These were from our like goodbye exit, and we had like dried flower petals as the like confetti or the rice that usually gets thrown, and I still had some in my bouquet all this time after. But I don't really want to damage the flower too much more, so I don't think I'm gonna do some more digging in that. But it was funny, we were finding dried rose petals in our hair and in our clothes. I think my husband had some in his shoes. This is very funny. I was very happy with my bouquet once it kind of, came together. And it's definitely shifted, like this flower is kind of all squished down in there, that I think was definitely like raised up a bit more. So it's not as, pristine as it once was, but it's still a lovely memory and keepsake that I am glad that I have. It definitely saved us a lot of money, because wedding florals are expensive. Ooh, this flower had a decent amount of dust, and it looked like some cobwebs. So let's try and clear those away. Clean off the brush a little bit. I am also not somebody that is like super big on flowers. I of course can appreciate their beauty, but I don't know that I even really have a favorite flower. If I had to choose, it would probably be a rose, just because I feel like roses are kind of just classically beautiful, but I'm sure there are other flowers out there that I might like more. I just, don't really know much. So having real florals was definitely not priority for me. I know some people that, really love flowers, like the idea of having artificial flowers. It's just like, it's not, like you can't entertain the idea, and I totally get that. Because there is also, I mean, having real florals around, just the smell, and it's it's very different. But we have been to quite a few weddings now that also used maybe not the wood flowers, but artificial flowers for their florals. And I think growing up, a lot of my like cousins' weddings and things like that had fake florals because no one in our family really had the money to have weddings with real florals, other than maybe like the bride's bouquet. And so that was kind of what I, grew up with and grew up around. And I feel like they have really gotten better in recent years. Like they have just really, at least in my mind as somebody that's not really into flowers, they just look more and more realistic. You can spend a decent amount of money on fake flowers if you want. I do think wedding planning is kind of a funny time because you just like tend to stress about things that might not be important at all. We have had quite a few friends get married after us, and my brother-in-law's wedding is coming up, and we were just joking about just how the wedding planning process goes. And I was telling them about, like, I remember one day, because I was just like so stressed thinking about, it was like something stupid, like a napkin roll, like what napkin roll I wanted. And of course, it wasn't about the napkin roll, it was just like having to deal with life stuff. And, weddings are just generally expensive. And even though we tried to do as much of a budget wedding as we could do for the things that we still wanted, I just did grow up with, weddings being this place where like family can really get together. It's like that saying that like weddings and funerals are really the only times you see all of your family and friends. And so I did want to make sure that it was, a good fun time and also reflected us. But there's just like natural stressors that come with that. And thankfully, I think that was kind of the only like super stressful time. I was also like at the same time dealing with like my bouquet. So I was very stressed out about like how everything was going to come together and in a way that I would be happy with ultimately. And of course it did, and we were able to pull things together. And I feel like we are generally very good planners together. Like I am quite a type A person when it comes to planning. And then my husband is very much, he will very happily step in when it is very obvious that I am getting stressed or busy. And so he was definitely like, equally involved in planning and definitely made like most of our vendor calls and stuff like that. So he was definitely, very much involved as well. I really enjoy planning. There were a lot of aspects that I really loved. We did all of our own stationery and I designed it in Canva. And I loved that. And then we even printed out some of it at home and then like trimmed the edges and put together the like stationery packets and stuff in the envelopes and did all of that ourselves. And so that was all a lot of fun and very, creative in a way that I really like. And I think in another life I could have been like an event planner, but I think wedding planning would be way too stressful for me because, like, rightfully so, people are spending a lot of money and people, tend to have a lot of expectations for their weddings. I feel like wedding planning would not be right for me, but I did have to do a lot of event planning in my last job and a little bit of it in my current job, and those are always kind of really fun aspects. I always love to do that. Alright, I think I have probably done a mediocre job of dusting, but that was also just kind of a pretense for me to film this video because I had the idea a while ago and I just haven't ever gotten around to it. But I hope that you enjoyed this video and hearing me just chit chat and ramble and show you my wedding bouquet. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day.